Tom Cruise has generated over $11 billion at the box office. He hangs off the sides of airplanes, rides motorcycles off cliffs, and practically saved the cinema industry with a smile worth more than most countries' GDP. He is, without question, the last true movie star. But when the premiere lights fade and the adrenaline settles, the silence is deafening. At 60 years old, Tom Cruise goes home to an empty house. The contrast between his global adoration and his personal isolation is jarring. We watched him exchange vows in 3 of the most high-profile marriages in history. First with Mimi Rogers, then the golden decade with Nicole Kidman, and finally the media frenzies with Katie Holmes. Yet every single one ended in a sudden, icy departure. Even more heartbreaking is the public reality of his estrangement from his youngest daughter, Suri, whom he reportedly hasn't seen in over a decade. But the narrative you've been sold, that his devotion to Scientology or his intensity drew these women away, is missing the most critical piece of the puzzle. The hidden truth is that none of these famous women were actually the love of his life. The reality is much more tragic. He spent decades trying to replace one specific woman. Who was she? And why did losing her turn the world's biggest star into its loneliest man? Before we start, don't forget to press that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's begin. If you look at the photos from the 90s, they look like the definition of Hollywood royalty. The height difference, the blinding smiles, the way she gazed at him with total adoration. It was picture perfect. But that was the problem. It was a picture, not a life. To the world, Nicole was his equal. To Tom, she was becoming a prop, a beautiful, statuesque accessory designed to normalize a man who was rapidly becoming a soldier for his beliefs. Behind closed doors, the golden couple dynamic was dissolving into something far more suffocating. Reports from that era describe a home environment that felt less like a marriage and more like a high-security compound. She was young, impressionable, and completely enveloped in his world, but as his intensity grew, the air in that house became too thin to breathe. She wasn't just a wife, she was a recruit in a war she didn't sign up for. While he was operating with the militant precision of a man on a mission, she was slowly withering in his shadow, controlled by an infrastructure that viewed her independence as a threat. The silence wasn't peace, it was compliance. When the end finally came, the public expected a devastated ex-wife. They expected a woman broken by the loss of the world's biggest movie star. Instead, we got one of the most visceral reactions in celebrity history. When the divorce papers were finalized, Nicole didn't collapse in tears. She walked out of her lawyer's office, threw her arms wide to the sky, and screamed with pure, unadulterated joy. It wasn't the sound of a woman who had lost everything. It was the sound of a prisoner who had just tasted fresh air. But Nicole wasn't the one who broke his heart. She was just the one who survived him. After Nicole escaped, Tom didn't go looking for a girlfriend. He went looking for a candidate. What followed was one of the most bizarre chapters in Hollywood history, a literal casting call for the role of Tom Cruise's wife. Reports later surfaced of a secret Scientology project where actresses were allegedly vetted, audited, and interviewed for the position. They weren't looking for chemistry, they were looking for compliance. After a few failed screen tests with other women, they found the perfect recruit, a young, wide-eyed Katie Holmes who had crushed on him since childhood. But because the courtship was a project, the romance had to be a performance. This is the dark context behind that infamous Oprah moment. We all laughed at the couch jump, treating it like a meme of a man in love. But look closer. It wasn't joy. It was manic overcompensation. It was a brand launch. He was selling the idea of passion so aggressively because the reality was likely a meticulously arranged contract. He was jumping on furniture to distract the world from the fact that his new relationship was moving with the speed and precision of a military operation. Katie didn't just marry a movie star, she entered a high-security surveillance state. But unlike Nicole, who withered, Katie plotted.
Her exit wasn't a breakup, it was a covert extraction mission. Realizing her every move was likely being watched by Tom's internal security team, Katie quietly fired anyone loyal to him. She secretly obtained a disposable burner phone, a piece of tradecraft usually reserved for spies, not spouses. Hiding in plain sight, she used that ghost line to hire 3 separate law firms in 3 different states, coordinating a blindside attack that would grant her sole custody before Tom even knew she was gone. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the like. It's free and really helps the channel grow. Oh, by the way, I will be posting more videos like this, so please subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss another deep dive from me.
But before the burner phones and the high-stakes escapes, there was a time when Tom's intensity wasn't a tactic. It was just raw, unfiltered hunger. To understand why his marriages end like covert military operations, you have to look at the relationships everyone forgot. Take Cher. Yes, that Cher. In the mid-'80s, she was a global icon, and he was just a kid in a leather jacket. Yet the dynamic wasn't what you'd expect. Years later, she dropped a bombshell that baffled Hollywood. She ranked Tom Cruise in her top 5 lovers of all time. Not because of his fame, he didn't have it yet, but because of an overwhelming, almost manic focus that she described as hot and heavy. He didn't just date her, he fixated on her. Then there was Melissa Gilbert, the Little House on the Prairie sweetheart. She didn't date a movie star, she dated a struggling actor named Tom Mapother who had nothing. She actually bought him his first set of dishes because he couldn't afford plates. But the fling ended as quickly as it began. Gilbert later hinted at a familiar problem. He was too intense, too fast, and things got dark too quickly. He doesn't just fall in love, he locks in. He moves with a terrifying speed, merging lives, finances, and beliefs before the first date is even over. It's a pattern that has haunted him for 40 years. He isn't just looking for a girlfriend. He is desperately, frantically trying to recreate a deep, primal connection he lost long before he ever set foot on a movie set. And that specific loss is the key to everything. That hollow ache for guidance made him the perfect mark for Mimi Rogers. She wasn't just his first wife, she was the architect. 6 years his senior, and the daughter of a prominent Scientology mission holder, Mimi didn't see a boyfriend, she saw a recruit. While the rest of the world saw a rising heartthrob, she saw raw, chaotic energy that needed to be weaponized. She was a high-level auditor within the church, and she began to dismantle Tom Mapother to build Tom Cruise. She introduced him to the technology that he credits with curing his dyslexia and granting him his supernatural focus. She took a kid who felt powerless and handed him a manual for total control. But this wasn't a romance, it was an initiation. She walked him through the doors of the organization that would eventually alienate him from his own daughter years later. She is the villain of his origin story because she traded his autonomy for discipline. And once the programming took hold, the programmer became obsolete. Mimi famously quipped that they split because Tom was considering becoming a monk to maintain the purity of his instrument. But the subtext was clear. He had graduated. He didn't need the teacher anymore. He had the church. She forged the armor he wears to this day, unaware that it would eventually lock him inside. She gave him power, but she took his freedom. To understand why he wears the armor, you have to witness the wound. Long before the audits, the billions, and the global fame, there was just Diane Cox. She wasn't a celebrity. She was his prom date in Glen Ridge, New Jersey. In 1979, Tom wasn't a god. He was an intense, vulnerable 18-year-old with a manic need for affection. Their romance was frantic and insatiable, unfolding in the back of her father's car and on the floor of his parents' garage. Diane later described a young man who didn't just love her, but needed her to validate his existence. He told her she was the love of his life. Then he left for Hollywood to chase the dream, and the dream cost him the girl. While he was thousands of miles away auditioning for scraps, Diane got lonely. She cheated. But the knife twisted when Tom called to surprise her. In a moment of fatal confusion, she thanked him for the flowers she had just received, flowers that another man had sent her. The slip-up didn't just cause a fight, it triggered a psychological meltdown. The revelation that the one person who knew the real Tom Mapother had betrayed him destroyed his capacity for blind trust. He went crazy, consumed by a jealousy so dark it frightened her. This is the skeleton key to his entire romantic history. Every relationship that followed, the contracts with Nicole, the silence of Katie, the auditing of Mimi, was a reaction to Diane. He learned that vulnerability is a liability. To survive, he decided he would never be the one waiting by the phone again. He would become the director of his own love life, casting women who could be managed, monitored, and scripted. He didn't stop loving women, he just stopped trusting them. The control isn't malice, it's a scar. That trauma didn't heal. It hardened into a fortress. Today, Cruise stands atop the Hollywood pantheon as a god of his own making, untouchable and seemingly invincible. He defies physics for our entertainment, hurling himself off cliffs and clinging to the sides of cargo planes, desperate to prove that he is in total command of his destiny. He has conquered gravity, the box office, and the aging process itself. But look closely at the eyes of the man who saves the world every summer, and you see the tragic cost of that control. He constructed a reality where betrayal is impossible because true intimacy is forbidden. He traded the messy, dangerous chaos of being known for the sterile safety of being worshipped. He has billions of dollars, fleets of aircraft, and the adoration of strangers. Yet he cannot buy the one thing Diane Cox destroyed, the ability to hand someone the map to his soul without fear. The audience cheers, the credits roll, and the stunts are perfect. But the silence waiting for him at home is deafening. He spent a lifetime sprinting away from the vulnerability of that boy in New Jersey, only to realize he left his heart behind. He is the most famous man on earth, and the loneliest.